Hi everyone, it's Paul. Let's look at endocervical cells. I'm going to start by looking at quickly the histo. So you can see the endocervical canal running down there on the left hand side, and it has a single layer of columnar cells, as do the glands that are lying underneath it. So they're lined by a simple columnar epithelium. And the cells, as you can see on a bit of high power, are really quite tall columnar cells. Nuclei are all arranged along the basement membrane, and the cells pointing in towards the lumen. There's a bit of kind of debris and mucus in that lumen there. And here on the right hand side you can see those long cells have been actually sectioned through, and they're looking a little bit more like a honeycomb. Let's look at endocervical cells now. So these are present in probably about 80% of smears, and they're usually in much fewer numbers than are squamous cells. So we're just looking around at some squamous cells, and you can see here is a cohesive little group of cells that seem to have a lot less cytoplasm than the squamous cells that are present. Looking around, mainly squamous cells here too, but here's another group. So these also are endocervical cells. You can see at this end they have a columnar shape to them, a honeycomb in this area, and then columnar configuration again on that side. And by that I mean you can see it's a long cell with a nucleus at one end. This is a sheet of endocervical cells, and you can see how all of the nuclei are in focus at once, so it's quite a flat, orderly sheet with the nuclei well spaced apart from each other. You can see they've got pretty fine, even chromatin, pretty uniform size to the nuclei, and little maybe nucleoli in some of them you can see. And very orderly, so all in focus. This area is a little different, and it's just because the sheet has folded over on itself here. This is another group. Here they look more tightly packed, but I can see a columnar shape there with the nucleus at one end of the cell, a long cell. And then in the middle area here is what we would call a honeycomb pattern. Notice how I can focus up and down. On one level I can bring the nuclei into focus, and the other level the honeycomb, and that's just the end of the cell. So in summary, endocervical cells form these flat cohesive groups. They look like a honeycomb where you're viewing them end on, or like a picket fence that's palisading where you can see them lying on their side. Nuclei are uniform, round, oval shaped, have a smooth nuclear membrane, typical, benign, fine, even chromatin pattern. Nucleoli are quite variable. Sometimes you can see them fairly prominently, and they're much more likely to be seen than are in squamous cells. Usually the cell shape is obviously columnar, at least in some parts, and it's helpful to look on the edges of the groups. There is much less homogeneous cytoplasm than you see in squamous cells. It's usually what we would call granular, and that's because it has very fine vacuoles in it. The cells are busy producing mucin. Ciliated cells do exist in the inner cervix, but we only